This morning's sermon is called Signs of the Second Coming. It's an important subject in our faith journey because we should revise our core beliefs. Now, according to Pastor George Burnside, in his book This I Believe, he said that the second coming is mentioned 2,700 times in the Bible and 300 times in the New Testament alone. So it must be really important. Now, secondly, when we think of the disasters that have happened in recent times, there's earthquakes in various places, and there's wars, including World War I, World War II, Syria, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Crimea, Somalia, Congo, the Six-Day War, just to mention a few. In the case of World War II, more than 60 million people died in that war, and that was 3% of the world's population at that time. But Jesus said these things would happen, which we'll read about later. Our text this morning come from the New King James Version, mostly. There's a couple in the Clear Word. The first text is Matthew 24. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus here was stating a dual prophecy. Firstly, regarding the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and secondly, regarding the second coming. Our next text, is that right? Yes. The next text is in Matthew 16. Then the Pharisees and Sadducees came and tested him, asked that he would show them a sign from heaven. He answered and said to them, "When it is evening, you say, 'It will be fair weather today, for the sky is red.' And in the morning, 'It will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and threatening.' Hypocrites! You know how to discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times." Jesus sounded a little bit angry here, which indicates we should be very discerning when it comes to the signs of the second coming. Hebrews 10:25 says, "Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." That is, the approach of the second coming. No man is an island, and so it's important for us to regularly attend church in order to study the Bible together as a group and affirm each other in our Christian journey. 2 Peter 3, knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lusts and saying, "Where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation." Does this remind you of Noah's Ark? When Noah was building the ark and scoffers were scorning him because it had never rained before, so how could it possibly do so now? They soon learned a lesson. But it was too late once God had closed the door of the ark. These verses in 2 Peter are saying that in the last days, scoffers will walk after their own lusts. The dictionary describes a scoffer as one who utters derision in mocking words. And now here's the text I referred to at the beginning, Matthew 24, 6 and 7. And you will hear of wars and rumours of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. The dictionary describes a pestilence as a deadly epidemic disease or plague, or it can mean a noxious doctrine or influence. The signs we should be looking for are wars, famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. We only have to turn on the news each night to see all of these things happening almost on a daily basis. So Jesus' coming must be getting close. Daniel 12:4, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many will run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Now, understanding the book of Daniel was held back until 1844. To run to and fro means people running around not knowing in which direction to go. And such behaviour does not tell you about people who trust in God, but those who've lost their Christian experience, if they ever had one, and those who have fallen away from God. Added to the signs we've already talked about are knowledge, travel, and speed. They're also signs of the second coming. Now, I'm sure I don't have to elaborate on these signs because they're very evident in this 21st century. Until 200 years ago, the speed of how fast a man could travel was the same as it had been 4,000 years before that. And at sea, it was only as fast as a wind could drive a ship. James 5:3 also tells us, you have laid up your treasure in the last days. You have laid up your treasure in the last days. Did you know there are 1,500 billionaires in the world today? Does this information reiterate what James said? And now to 2 Timothy 3. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. Perilous means full of hazards. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good. These texts don't describe very much that's good, do they? And now let's hear what the clear word says on the same verses through to verse 5. I want you to realise that as bad as times are now, this is nothing compared to the perilous times of the last days. People will love only themselves and money. They'll be conceited, abusive, disobedient, contemptuous of parents, ungrateful and impious. Many will lose all natural affection, will break contracts, slander their friends, lack self-control, be brutal and despisers of what is good. They will be treacherous, rash, irresponsible, conceited, and will love pleasure more than they love God. Outwardly, they'll be religious, but they'll deny the power of God and the need for them to change. Don't be taken in by such people. Does this sound like our world today? And now Luke 21. And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, from the fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven will be shaken. Man's fear will be a sign of the second coming. Some people in the world today get very upset when the stock market crashes for the fear of losing all their money. And the sea and the waves roaring. Could that mean a tsunami, I wonder? In the case of Iraq, Africa, North Korea and some of those countries, people fear for their lives and the lives of their families on a daily basis because of what is going on there. And Matthew 24:29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And now to Revelation 6. I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth. It transpired that these 4 events did occur in chronological order. Firstly, the Lisbon earthquake. It happened in Portugal on the 1st of November 1755. Around 50,000 people died in that earthquake, and it was one of the world's deadliest disasters up to that time. The second sign was the sun would be darkened, and that happened on the 19th of May 1780, when the chickens went home to roost at midday. Midday became like midnight. The third sign, the moon would not give its light, which also occurred that night. According to eyewitnesses, the night was darker than anybody had ever experienced, and it was compared to the darkness plague in Egypt. Horses couldn't be coaxed out of their stable because they were so spooked, and men couldn't find their way home even though they were familiar with the path. Now, whilst overseas in a cave, our guide suddenly turned off the light. We couldn't even see our hand in front of us, and that's how the darkness was described in that night. Then, at midnight, the darkness disappeared, and the moon and the stars shone brightly in the night sky again. The fourth sign was the meteoric shower that took place on the night of November 13, 1833. It was so bright that a newspaper could be read in the street, and many thought the end of the world had come. Thousands upon thousands of meteors fell from the sky per hour that night. Now, this is the interesting bit. I do not know if these signs were the total fulfilment of what the Bible describes as happening in the last days or not, because many times God uses natural phenomena. These signs also only happened in one part of the world. Regarding the dark day, it has been said that there was a fierce forest fire generating thick black smoke, and then a heavy fog settled on the land. Plus, a black dark storm was brewing. And regarding the meteoric shower, well, apparently this happens every 33 years naturally, but not to the extent that it happened that night. Personally, I think that maybe, just maybe, it's possible that these signs will occur again, just closer to Jesus' second coming, but over a much wider area of earth. But I don't know the answer to this, because we can only be 100% sure of some prophecies after they've been fulfilled. You can make up your own mind on that. Matthew 24 said, "But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be." These texts indicate that many people will be caught unawares when Jesus returns to the earth. Now, I know that it's politically incorrect to say this, but do you think when Jesus uttered those words, he may have been looking forward to our time, to the gay Mardi Gras that convenes in Sydney each March? It's possible. But now on a more positive note, let's say together a wonderful promise that Jesus made to us, found in Matthew 24:14. "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." How different is our world today compared to when I was young. We now have a plethora of ways to spread the gospel compared to the olden days. For instance, think of television, smartphones, and Facebook. Now, I'm not very au fait with multimedia like some of you, but I'm absolutely amazed when I think how sophisticated Facebook is. For instance, it knows I like encouraging Bible texts, and now when I log in, up pops a range of encouraging Bible texts. And this is scary. It even knows which political party I vote for, and it brings up messages promoting that party. Wow, it's scary. And it knows that I love Gary Kent's incredible journey. So, during the week, it tells me what his subject's going to be on the following Sunday morning on Gem. It's frighteningly sophisticated. Recently, Ken bought me a stick vacuum cleaner, and he must have been looking at the internet at all the different models and prices, because now when we log into the internet, up pops a whole big range of stick vacuum cleaners. Well, it's a bit scary and it can be used for evil. But hey, it's a great way to spread the gospel, particularly in third world countries where they have the internet. Now, this is a sobering thought. Just before Jesus comes, probation will close. Listen to the words of Revelation 22 in the clear word. Just before Jesus comes, probation will close, and he will say, "Let those who are doing wickedly remain wicked, and those who are filthy-minded remain filthy. Let those who are doing right continue to do right, and those who are holy continue to grow in holiness." Ellen White says that when probation closes, it will happen suddenly, without warning and when we least expect it, because then Jesus has ceased to plead for men and the cases of all will have been decided. She says that at that time, religious leaders will be pointing forward to long ages of peace and prosperity. But 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says, "When they cry peace and safety, then sudden destruction." What this means for us is that we must stay close to God in order that the deceit of the last days won't sweep us up. Now listen to this, it's also important. Once probation closes, we will not be able to switch sides. Did you get that? Once probation closes, we will not be able to switch sides. At that time, the fate of every human being will have been decided, and each person will have decided if they're going to be on the side of Jesus or against him. That is a sobering thought. Luke 21 says, "They will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." Now, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. Then he spoke to them a parable. "Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they're already budding, you see and know for yourselves that summer is now near. So you also, when you see these things happening, know that the kingdom of God is near. Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." Jesus is saying here that when you see all these things happening, it means the second coming is imminent. And this generation will by no means pass away till all things take place. That means the generation who see all the signs happening. Now, we know that we're living at the end of time, and Jesus is coming back to this earth very, very soon. And what a wonderful day that will be. Building up to the climax of all Christ's second advent signs are the words, "Your redemption draweth nigh." Your redemption draweth nigh. That's a promise we should keep close to our hearts all the time. Then the dark shadow of sin will have gone from the universe, and all that will be left will be an anthem of praise and thanksgiving. Now, the next words of what I say are really important, so take notice. The second coming of Christ will be the greatest event since Jesus died on the cross for yours and my sins. The second coming of Christ will be the greatest event since Jesus died on the cross for yours and my sins. Now let's keep in mind a wonderful promise Jesus made in John 14:2 and 3. Can we say this together? In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you will be also. Jesus himself uttered those words, so there can be no mistake of what's going to happen. I will come again. I will come again. The best and sweetest of all Jesus' words that even a small child can understand. These words are divine comfort in all our sorrows and a healing balm for our grief. Jesus is coming soon with all his holy angels. Isaiah 26:19 says, of those who have died in Christ, awake and sing, all you who dwell in dust, which means those who have died in Christ will be raised with perpetual youth. What an awesome promise is that. Nobody knows the day or the hour of Jesus' coming. Matthew 24:36 says, not even the angels in heaven know, only God himself knows. But when we see all these signs, we know that the time is fast approaching. Have you ever thought how wonderful it will be to sit at Jesus' feet and ask him all the questions that have perplexed you during this life? As for me, don't laugh, but I'm going to ask him to tell me more about Melchizedek. Who were his parents? What exactly was his role? We just know he was a priest, but I'm going to ask Jesus to tell me all about who he was. And what about all the things you haven't fully understood in the Bible? To be able to look into Jesus' loving eyes and freely ask him any question you want to, with no more pain, no more sickness or sadness, only being surrounded by all of heaven's glory. Won't that be wonderful? And now I charge you to think about this question. Are you ready to meet Jesus? Which doesn't mean getting ready, it means being ready. Are you ready to meet Jesus? We don't know the day or the hour when Jesus will come, but it doesn't matter if we're ready now.